Good morning, everyone. My name is Vishnu from Group 4, and along with Samyukta, Krishna, Samrita, Sneha Shri, Aditya, Anita, we are going to present the summary of the book Ways of Seeing. It's published on 1972 by John Berger, an English art critic, a novelist, a painter, as well as the Booker Prize holder. Next slide, please. John Berger starts with a comment saying that we always see first, then say. We take in a reality and then express it. So this is how the book begins. Explain the relationship between vision, images, speech, and understanding. What we see is something that we can compile into our brains, which normally makes sense. Explaining it to others from their perspective is something different. The author gives an example of Hans' painting, portraying how different people look at things differently. Due to this difference of perspective, the history of image gets blurred, and this is called mystification. What other people see can be interpreted differently due to their own experiences. In order to make others understand what we can see, we create a modification to the original image, thus creating our own way of seeing it. Next slide, please. But once photography was introduced and the blur screen of the past became clearer, the price was the uniqueness of the images. As things start to repeat, the uniqueness of the image started to decrease. And now I give it to the next presenter.
The meaning of art and the image has been obscured by the photographic reproduction. The major impact has destroyed the uniqueness image. There was a conflict where commercial value reflects spiritual value. The Virgin of Rocks by Leonardo da Vinci is an example which is at National Gallery Museum, London. The National Gallery sells a collection of the Virgin and Child with St. Anne and St. John the Baptist. Next slide. In order to hide the link between the artistic value and the market value, a false sense was created on religiosity. The majority of population believes that the art museum is full of holy and relics, which excludes them. The meaning of an image depends on the context and is used for advertising. Next slide. Berger had also reproduced an image of Van Gogh's wheat field with crows, which was done before he killed himself. But the total approach of the art is incomplete and no longer exists. Still, people show art in a mystified way as a political issue. Berger encourages to take hold of the art history by applying his own lies. Now over to Samyukta.
Hello everyone, I'm Samyukta and I'll be presenting the second chapter. So, in both life and art, social convention dictates that men and women are perceived differently. Men project a capacity for power, whereas women's entire being is thought to reside in their physical appearance. As a result of this, women are forced to survey themselves constantly, conscious of the fact that their tastes, values, and personalities will be judged by male viewers. To simplify this, Berger offers the following paradigm. Men act and women appear. While men do the looking, women watch themselves being looked at. So, women were the principal recurring subject in the category of nude in European oil paintings. The first nudes in the tradition depicted Adam and Eve. Most of us know the story of Adam and Eve. So, as a result of eating the apple, they become aware of their nakedness, and the woman is blamed, and she becomes a subservient of the man. So they become aware of the nakedness and hide with fig leaves and show hand gestures. So here, the shame becomes a kind of display. So even as nude oil paintings grew more secular, female subjects continue to be defined by their awareness of the spectator. So this is an example of that, the couple by. Yeah, and another example is Susanna and the Elders by Tintoretto. Here, the woman looks at herself in a mirror, just as the spectator looks at her. Here. So, the theme of the work is the act of looking at a nude woman. So this is the theme of this painting. And here, the vanity by Memling. Here, the mirror in such paintings often symbolize women's vanity, allowing painters to condemn the so-called vanity of female subjects that they painted in nude for the sake of their own pleasure. So this belief carries over to paintings like Judgment of Paris. So in Judgment of Paris, Helen of Troy is deemed the most beautiful woman in the world. The painting's subject is a competition between women vying to be recognized by a man as the most beautiful. But what right do they win? According to Berger, the prize is to be owned, to be immortalized in a painting which a male owner will be able to enjoy. Thus, female nakedness in this tradition is never an expression of the female's own desires, but a submission to the spectators. Berger briefly notes that this is unique to the European art, but there are several other cultures where this is depicted through partnered couples where both man and women play an active role, like Indian art, Persian art, and pre-Columbian art. So Berger distinguishes between the nude and the naked simply. The nude is always conventionalized, never a unique individual. To be nude is to be on display, while to be naked is to be oneself. In the traditional European oil painting, the protagonist of the picture's narrative is outside the painting itself. The spectator is the center of the action, and he is presumed to be a man. The rest of the painting's action implicitly addresses him, whether by orienting figures outwards so they face the viewer frontally, or casting the subject's gaze towards the viewer rather than the other characters in the painting. This habit continues into modern imagery, which Berger illustrates by including a photo from a pornographic magazine. Alongside Ingres La Grande Odalisque, I couldn't find the image, so I replaced the magazine's image with another image. So what Berger tries to explain here is that the central nude female figure looks at the viewer with a self-conscious charm, exhibiting her femininity. And he also offers one example of an exceptional painting of nakedness. That is Rubens' Elaine Forman in a fur coat. The artist paints his own wife here. This image is frozen in time, allowing the viewer to easily imagine a moment when the subject was fully naked, such that these moments coexist with the one that captured in the actual painting. And he closes this chapter by pointing out how the system of gender relations encoded in most nude painting is inherently contradictory. So Berger encourages us to question our passive reception of media's gender representations. And now over to Samrita. Or Anita, sorry.
Yeah, guys, this is Anita. I will be taking from chapter 5. So chapter 5 is basically about oil paintings. Berger begins the chapters by posing the question, what is a love of art? Within this tradition of oil painting, love of art comes to the stand-in for the desire to possess. This is illustrated with the painting of an art collector depicted among his vast collection of paintings. This logic is related to the elaboration of capitalism in Europe around the time that the oil painting tradition came into fashion. The implicit possibility of owning objects depicted in oil painting upholds the ruling class's desire to enstretch the emerging power of capital. Moreover, Berger argues that this worldview, with its new attitudes towards property and exchange, was expressed by oil painting better than it could have been by any other medium. Samrita will take from here.
I'm Samrita. I'm going to present the second part of the 5th chapter. The author initially talks about people valuing paintings of history and mythology more, but today they are considered the wackiest of all, the classics. Next slide, please. The study of classics is still given a moral value as it provides detailed information of the ruling class with references. The genre or low-life pictures. These were thought as the opposite of the mythological pictures, but it was vulgar instead of noble. The purpose of the genre picture was to prove that virtue in this world was rewarded by social and financial successes. The painters actually used sentimental moralizing to create the illusion of substantiality, yet there were few painters who painted with bitter and direct realism, whom the author calls as exceptional painters. The painters of landscape painting, they struggle with the very language of own art as understood by the tradition of his calling, as most landscape paintings were done to show each one's status. Hence, the author believes to become an exceptional painter was one to recognize his vision of purpose and separate it from the usage for which it had been developed. Thank you. Over to Aditya.
Hi guys, this is Aditya and I'll be presenting the 7th chapter. In the 7th chapter, Berger deals with advertisements which he calls as publicity images. Next slide. According to Berger, advertisements are static and we are the ones who move around them and making them dynamic. Next slide. Next. There are advertisements everywhere around us which always refer to the past or speak about the future. There is an interesting fact that most Americans are exposed to around 4,000 to 10,000 advertisements per day. Berger says that advertisements manufacture glamour by making the viewers envy the future version of themselves that will become reality if they choose to buy that product. For example, if we look at a poster, we will imagine ourselves in the poster and it tempts us to buy the product. Next slide. The purpose of advertisement is to make us dissatisfied with our current lives so that we buy the product. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Mohan and I'll be doing the second part of the 7th chapter. In this chapter, Berger returns to the early discussion of oil paintings and he connects it to the posters. Fundamentally, oil paintings was a celebration of private property, deriving from the principle that you are, what you have. Publicity is essentially nostalgic, relying on references to the past, to the fact that the product itself can never live up to their own claims. Buy this and you'll be happy is a term that was very popular because at the olden ages, war was a real issue, but advertisements showed that the products can give happiness. They insisted a false hope upon them. And oil paintings added a vivid effect to those posters, so it made them more more pleasant to see for the users and caught their interest. And I would like to conclude the book by saying that from this book we have learned how the way you see and understand things changes the whole composition and meaning of the object. There is something hidden always in everything you see. I would like to thank our teachers for giving us this opportunity and my group members for making this exercise a fun and learning experience. Thank you.